Hey guys, it's PJ Metz here, and this is my 98 Ram 1500. I bought this from a guy in Two Rivers about a year and a half ago, and when I bought it, it had a serious engine misfire, and this video will be how to diagnose it and fix the problem. So when I bought this truck, it was throwing a serious engine misfire code. So we put it to a code tester, code reader, and it came out as a multiple misfire for the cylinders, like multiple cylinders were misfiring. And we diagnosed it, and we changed out the plugs, the wires, and the cap and rotor, which is way back here, hard to get to. When we took out the plugs and the wires, they were really corroded and really bad, and that could have been the problem. After we fixed the plugs and wires and cap and rotor, the multiple misfire code went away, and we reset the code, and one other code came up, which was the cylinder number 3 misfire. And this is how we diagnosed and solved that problem. On this particular engine, cylinder number 3 is the second one from the front on the right side of this engine. And it is the same for the 5.9. This engine is a 5.2. And for our first test, we did our compression test on this cylinder, which was taking out the plug, taking out the wire, and putting the compression tester inside the head itself. And it came out good, so we knew that wasn't the problem. And our second test was the injectors. So we took out the fuel rail right here and made sure all of the injectors were seated correctly. And they were, and once they were seated correctly, we would put them back in, see if the engine ran any different, and it didn't. So our third test for the fuel injectors was to unplug this fuel injector for cylinder number 3. And if the engine sounded different, the fuel injector for cylinder number 3 would not be the problem, but in our case, the engine sounded no different whatsoever. So we knew that the injector number 3 right here would be the problem, and so we switched that out, and ever since we put the new injector in, the engine has been running just fine. So when you're going to go and change out a fuel injector, you have to take out this air intake. So first you want to take out this clip, take out this hose right here, and there is another thing over here which takes in air from the wheel well and brings it into the engine. So there's a good air fuel mixture. And after that, you will want to take out this wire and this wire back here, right here, and to clear the way for this injector rail. And once you get to that, you will want to take out 2 bolts, one right here on top and one under this air intake, which we will not take off. And so after you take out the intake, you will take out the rail, and then you will unplug the wires, all 4. You will not need to take out the fuel line, and you will not need to take out the fuel line going to the other side, because they are flexible and they will not break, hopefully. So when you take out an injector, there is a clip on top that you will have to pop off, and it's not that hard. And you will pull up the fuel rail, and when you do this, you have to be really careful, because you could either lose the O-ring that is on the injector, or you could snap off the injector inside the head. One thing to keep in mind when you put the fuel injectors back in is when you try to put the fuel injector back in, you will have to keep an O-ring, which is the thing that seals the fuel from getting outside of the injector. And you will want to make sure both O-rings on top and the bottom of the injector are in place and lubricated, so it is easier to get in and out of the fuel rail. I use petroleum jelly because it is very lubricated, and it doesn't inject petroleum jelly into the engine unless you get it on top of the fuel injector. And you will want to push the fuel injector into the rail, which is not that hard if you get the right angle and you can move it around a little bit, but without snapping off the tip of the fuel injector. And you'll clip that back in place. You'll put the the wires on the fuel injector, and you'll put the fuel rail into the position with all 4 of the injectors in the head. Make sure the heads are clean so that if you have any dirt or grime inside the head, it will not hurt the engine. One thing to keep in mind before you take it all apart is I like to use an air hose and blow out the manifolds and the top of the engine, because all the dirt can get into the heads and it will ruin the engine. It won't ruin it, but it will decrease the power and the limitation of the engine. And yeah. So the other things that I've done to this truck, because the engine misfire wasn't the only problem, was I fixed the power steering pump and the pulley that it was on and all the hoses and the lines, because the power steering is a very vital thing to keep in the truck. And I also fixed the serpentine belt, because it was squeaking and it could go bad. And I also fixed the tensioner pulley, which is to tighten the belt up and loosen it so you could get it on and off easier. And this pulley right here we fixed because it was just going bad and the bearing was going loose, which is the idler pulley. And yeah, and I also fixed the water pump, which is right here at the bottom of the engine, and it is really hard to get to because you have to take the serpentine belt off, you have to take the fan off, you have to take this fan cover off, and that pumps the water from this radiator to the engine, which cools down the engine. And yeah, it's all the things that we fixed on the truck so far. One reason, or multiple reasons, why to fix this truck is because this truck was not running at full potential and it wasn't running good enough to be a farm truck. And if it were a farm truck, you'd want it to be perfect, not perfect as body style, but perfect running wise, because it does get a lot of use. And you don't want to having to go buy tons of trucks year round and other years and years to come. You don't want to keep buying trucks over and over again, and that's why you want to keep the trucks running to its full potential and good enough to be run a lot as a farm truck. Thanks for watching my video on how I fix my truck.